All right, so let's talk admin. All right, so what does the Bible say about administration? 1 Corinthians 12:28, it says this, and God has appointed these in the church, first apostles, second prophets, third teachers, after that miracles, and then gifts of healing, helps, administrations, and then various of tongues. So what do we learn about administration in this particular verse is that it is God appointed and it is a gift. In some translations, this word administration is used as government or leadership. And in the very core of that root word is, in definition, is to steer, to pilot, or to guide. So that is what administration is in a biblical sense. So it is a God-appointed position to do what? To bless and build his church. And we need to recognize it as such with some emphasis and some importance. I interviewed my current overseer, who's the pastor's wife of our church, and she said when they planted Reliance Church, their first hire was an admin. It wasn't another pastor, it wasn't a worship leader, it was an administrator. That's the first hire for their church plant. So it's important. Some of you in this room, depending on where you guys are coming from or what church structure or size, you might be saying, well, Krista, we don't have one. God hasn't appointed one for us yet. So what's the answer? Well, God designed it as such, so it's something that we can actively pray that the Lord will provide. And he will. He will faithfully provide, and we can pray according to the model in which he even says in his word. Lord, provide an admin, because God is faithful. But in the meantime, as I have heard it, if it is not your gifting, it is a place and opportunity for discipline. If it's not someone's gifting yet, in your body or in your leadership, it's a discipline that needs to be matured and practiced. And so I get that it's humbling to have to do something outside your gifting, but the Lord is even faithful in that, right? He'll not only provide, but he'll help strengthen that discipline. Because we can't simply just say, well, we don't have one, so we won't implement it. It's too important to not do so. So we can grow into that discipline. And according to 1 Corinthians 12:28, we can also see that it's a leadership role. And so because it is a leadership type role, every encouragement, characteristic, rebukes, and warnings that are normally applicable to leaders, it applies to administration as well. Okay, admins are called to lead gently, kindly. They need to lead by example. They too need to be filled by the Holy Spirit. They ought to not tyrant or lord over people. They need to be pure at heart, in motives. They need to be submissive. All these different things all apply into this particular role. And so, looking at what the Bible says about administration, the follow-up question is then who are we becoming as a church body when we recognize, utilize, and embrace the role of administration within the body? Well, hopefully, we become a healthier body, and ultimately, we look more like Christ. That's always the goal, right? So the healthier body, what does that even look like in this context? A healthier body, a body that is reassured of the support, works orderly and together, and can freely serve in the places in which God has called, gifted, and equipped people. All right? It is not just in function, but it's also in relationship with one another as well. That's really important. A gentleman named Matthew Buffy, he wrote an article for Faith Life recently, and he likened administration within the church like a trellis. And this is what he says. The trellis doesn't exist for itself, but for the vine. No one just looks at a trellis and admires a trellis, but behind every sturdy vine is an admirable trellis. That is administration. Not only that, but as a part of becoming a healthier body, we need to function in order. God is a God of order. We know this. 1 Corinthians 14:33, since God is not a God of disorder, but of peace. And Paul is talking about this. He's speaking about the functions of the gifts within the church, and also the attribute of Christ within the church as it's functioning within in its callings and giftings of peace. In the same article, Matthew Buffy says this: administrators deter chaos. They keep things running smoothly so everyone can work unhindered, without stumbling blocks in any shape or form. They just get to grow. This beautiful vine, this plant is just growing either upward or sideward or both. And the administration kind of just helps support it in the sense of, again, in that attribute of Christ, that he is a God of order and he's a God of peace. When I started administrating for On the Edge, because it was a brand spanking new ministry at the time, my follow-up question to the Lord calling me there is, okay, what am I supposed to do? You know, what is an administrator's main goal? Like, what is my main goal in support of the director at the time? And I remember specifically the Lord said, clear the path. That's all he said. Clear the path. Make the path free and unhindered for the pastor to pastor, for your worship leaders to just lead in worship, for your volunteers to serve, minister, meet students where they at. Clear the path. So that the body can just simply function. When the church is functioning in their callings and gifts, they tend to serve the body better. And then the body becomes healthier, right? So if I think about this all the time, like my brain is kind of an image vault. I just think about things in pictures. And it would be really difficult if the heart had to also breathe for the body. And simply, you know, like the heart just needs to pump blood. That's what it needs to do. But it had to do two things. The body tends to start to deteriorate. It starts to collapse and destroy itself because it's not in its right giftings. So again, it goes back to who are we becoming? Hopefully a healthier body, in that we're supported, we're working together in order, and that we're also just in the paths and in the lanes in which God has called and equipped us to. None of this is worth our time or my time if it's not making us more and more like Christ, right? Like, okay, what's the point of administration if it isn't going to make us follow after Christ likeness? And I love this because the idea behind administration that I've seen is that we get to partner in his likeness of his loving care. 1 Corinthians 12:25. Paul talking about, again, the body and how it functions. There shouldn't be any schisms, divisions, gaps within the body, but that the body should have the same care for one another. The members of the body cannot independently work of each other. Like the muscle system can't be like outside the body doing what muscle things do. You know, it's just there's no functionality in that. And so he's saying, hey, as the body and the members of the body as one, we ought to lovingly care for one another. And that means is to have a heart for each other, not to just do a job. And how desperately bad do we need this within the church today and in the world that we live in? Because the world that we live in, all they know is to take care of themselves, right? Like that's just kind of where we're at. So the church, as the church in becoming the likeness of Christ, let us be the model and the light of people taking care of people. That's who we really ought to be. The motivation of ministry is always love. It's never anything else. So let's lovingly care for each other. John 13:35 says, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. And so let us, again, in becoming what we are supposed to be becoming in Christ, is that we get to imitate and reflect his loving care. And then secondly is we get to reflect the likeness of Christ's intentionality. Christ, the Savior, the God that we serve, is incredibly intentional. Members of the body have a function and a place, and I believe Pastor Tim kind of slightly mentioned it yesterday. There is no small ministry, zero. There is no small role. I'm weird, and sometimes I think, like, what is the earlobes for? Like, you know, like genuinely, like, why do we need them besides, like, hanging dope hoops off of them? I think about that, but in Christ, even that has a function. The members of your church are not just warm bodies, right? Like, again, I think about, like, I don't know if any of you guys watched Mortal Kombat or played it as a kid, but Scorpion, he would, like, get over here, and I feel like, but the reason why he does that is because he, like, senses a warm body in the room, like an enemy, and he spits out this, like, creepy thing out of his hands, and I feel like sometimes ministry can function like that, like, you're a warm body, get over here, and I'm like, can we not do that? Are you okay? You're just like kind of getting recruited into this. We have to remember intentionality. The members of the body all have function and a place. God has uniquely knitted them, gifted them, and appointed them. And how Christ-like is that is to simply stop and say, I made you for something, and you have a purpose, and we're going to put you in there, and you're going to thrive and see God glorified through you. People, and then as a byproduct of that, people are then seen, they're properly utilized, and then there's just a certain joy. Like, I don't know how many of you feel like you're, like, in your lane. Like, I am in my lane. It is shaped like Krista, and I'm just going, you know, there's just something so sweet about that. And so we ought to, by extension, because it is how Christ is, we too, as his body, need to function in that way. And so we looked at what the Bible says. We looked at who are we becoming then, healthier body and more like Christ, very important. Now let's have the hard talk, okay? In my time growing in administrative work, I have heard directly and indirectly some of the fears, the misconceptions, the accusations, and the hindrances of an administrator. Because I am an admin, I'm still currently in that role, and so I understand and get it to some extent, you know, and so I kind of wanted to just go into that. It's a safe place. I'm going to hear certain verbal, that's okay. Agree, disagree, we're good. That's the point. This is a workshop, right? So we have learned that admins, the root word of that is to steer, to pilot, and to guide. So here's the hard talk. Some uppers get really scared of that. They're like, huh? What do you mean they're steering? What do you mean they're piloting? Those sound very authoritative, and somewhat it is. But here's the thing. As admins, the role is to steer in the direction that we have been given. We're not just like, I'm going to go over here, you're going over there, sweet. That's not, and I get that that is probably where the fear is, or maybe the misconception or the frustration. According to a commentary, it says the gift of administration is to direct and manage the people within the local church. The word administration is actually a naval metaphor. Literally means to steer or pilot a ship. This person keeps the ship of the church on its course. So I have heard it said, isn't that not the leader's role? No, it's actually the admin's role. And so I guess you guys are learning how I think, but think Titanic and think Pirates of the Caribbean, right? So there's a scene in the Titanic right before they hit the iceberg. They're in the ship's cockpit? I don't know what it's called. The cockpit of the ship, right? There's a guy on the steer. He's like he's not steering like crazy, but he's just like, he has his hand on the steer, and where's the captain? Having tea. Like sitting, like he like lounges and someone serves him tea. But here's this guy who's on a steer. It's not the captain of the ship. He's just the guy on the steer. And the same thing with Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, it's rare to see like Jack Sparrow or Barbossa on the steer unless all chaos has broken loose, and then normally they're like up there. They're like, drop the main, I don't know. You know, they call out pirate things, right? Yeah, that's good. And so even within those things, you start seeing like there's someone at the steer. Why? Because the captain needs to be directing things. Because if the captain is over here, from my experience, and you can, again, may not be the same for you guys, but normally most captains know where they're going, but they don't tell anybody. Right? And so now you have a ship full of people. They're going the right direction because the captain knows where they're going, but people are just standing there. And when storms come, right, the captain's still like, we're going that way, but who then goes, hey, I need you to, you know, there's a hole, or I need you to whatever. Who's doing that? So I get that this is hard. So here's the thing. Uppers need to share the vision and the direction in which you need to go. Proverbs 29:18 says, without revelation, people run wild. And trust me, your people will run wild. And guess who's included in that? Your admin. They might start making executive decisions because you have not. That's where there's conflict, right? And that is not the correct model. I'm saying it happens. I'm not saying it's correct. But that's what ends up happening. People will run wild. And when I say share the direction or share the vision or share the revelation, not just like the one time, like it's January, we're doing a mission, like ministry staff, like pitch, and then the team doesn't hear from you the rest of the year. You have to continuously share this. Here's why. Ministry is like an ocean. It is not a beautifully paved road. You're already dealing with parents, with people, their stories, their pains. You may get off track, and I'm almost positive you will, but when you continuously share that vision, it keeps you right back on track. And secondly, the reason why you need to continuously share this vision is the Lord tends to change things. The Lord might change directions on you entirely. And if you don't share the change of directions, your admin and your team's headings are still at the old destination. The Lord might tell you, make a U-turn. But then because it's been pitched in January 1 of the year, and then in June, it's like, make a U-turn. I need to hey guys, I'm so sorry, but the Lord's telling us to go back. So continuously share that. So that's hard talk number 1. Hard talk number 2 is admins say no too much and they ruin my plans. I've heard it. It's true. I get it. But here's the thing. Ministry needs them. You can't just like dispel them out because they're ruining your plans. 1 Corinthians 12:18 and 21 says, God has set the members of the body as he pleases, each one of them. And you can't just say, well, I don't need them. The hand can't say like, well, I don't need the eye. What am I going to do with an eye? You know? But the body's like, no, you need them. You need them and they need you. So again, admins, they don't go where they haven't been determined, but somebody needs to make a determination as to where they're going, right? So they need each other. Here's another thing, trust each other. Know that your admin actually wants what you want, which is what is best for Jesus' people. That's what we want. We want the same thing as our leader. We are not the enemy. We are not the enemy. And sometimes we may be the only no person in a room of yes people. Okay, so I know that that's hard, but we may be the ones saying, hey, this may not work, or this might be unwise, or hey, we're going at this direction at this many knots, but we're now at shallow reefs and we're gonna hit. Somebody needs to say those things, and most of the time, that's sometimes your admin. They work really closely with you. Hard talk number 3 is they don't lighten my load, they actually give me more work to do. I have heard that. Admins add more work to something simple. For example, I want to take my students to Oceanside to go indoor skydiving. Epic idea, right? Just like right down the street. But then the admin's response is, where's the liability? What insurance do they need? Parental consent? Who's driving? Who's going to be in each person's car? Prearranged driver's list in case of an accident. What is the ratio? Registration? What is the cost? Is every adult going live scanned? Like that is what we tend to do. But here's the thing. Admins look to count the cost of things. Not just financial cost, but the cost of the ministry. Luke 14:28-30, it kind of shares this picture parable. For which of you, wanting to build a tower, doesn't first sit down and calculate the cost to see if you have enough to even complete it? Otherwise, after he had laid down the foundation and cannot finish it, all the onlookers will begin to ridicule him, saying, this man started something and he can't finish. Tim Chaddick even said it last night, make plans to finish. That is the point, right? Because on the other side of that, there's souls involved, right? It's not just like, I want to make an event and you started it, but when we don't finish it and we don't count that cost and people are not asking these proper questions, there might not be a conclusion. And that conclusion could genuinely bring people to the gospel. Not that skydiving can, maybe it can, I don't know. Maybe they have a near-death experience and they're like, Jesus, I need you, I don't know. They might. So let us help and come alongside to see the things all the way through. That is our desire as admins, see everything all the way through. We do also set boundaries to protect the people and the ministry and the witness of the church. And so, a little like group participation, I guess. So in your ministries, in youth, how many audiences do you have? Meaning like whose eyes are watching your ministry? So God, okay. Who else? Your lead pastor, your students, your students' friends, parents. Who else? Other leaders. Spouses, cops, the generation that's coming up into your ministry, right? So here are all these audiences that we desire to bring stability to when they're coming into our ministry, right? So that's the point of the protection of not only the people, not only the ministry, but also of our witness as a body. Oh, and then one thing that you guys missed is the community in which your youth group interacts with. So you go to indoor skydiving, you're gonna leave a witness of what Reliance Youth Church looks like, right? And that might be the only Jesus reflection that they ever get. Sorry, I use Reliance because I go there. You know what I'm saying? It's also the community. It could be a park. Did you guys leave it better than you found it? Did you guys, did your kids pick a fight with the people that were there? You know what I mean? There's so many things, right? And so, yes, they did, and we won. What? I'm just kidding. So again, counting that cost, asking those things, being able to not to worry you, but to be able to say, here are my audiences, and this is how I'm being faithful and being a good steward of it, right? Volunteer training, we talk about that all the time. That's a part of counting the cost. Live scans, if you are a church in not Southern California, but if you're a church in the state of California, everyone who comes near your students need to be live scanned. Fingerprints. Mandated reporter also just became a mandatory requirement for everyone who deals with minors in the state of California. Recommended counseling training, trauma, anxiety, LGBTQ, self-harm, depression, all these things are all in place in counting the cost of the ministry. And by extension is what we do as admins. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but again, it's all for the furtherance of the kingdom and unhindered ministry for each and every one of you. So we've looked at admin stuff. We looked at what God says in his word, who are we becoming, the hard talks. Now let's talk events, right? So, the word's not there, but let's talk events. Why do we even need admin work, support for events? Because people will not really notice that you're doing everything well. They'll notice when things are going bad. That's the truth. People are most likely to leave a negative review than a good one. I don't know why that is, but it's true. Yes. And ministry done well comes with hard things already. Like, you don't need to add on top of that. It comes with stuff that's already difficult. So I have 3 points. We'll go through them. For event planning, number 1, time. All right? Time is your best friend. It really, really is. And so I always recommend to create a timeline that is suitable for your church body. And this is what I mean about that, right? So you're saying, hey, we're doing a topical study, and we want to cover, again, the only example that I think of is sexuality, because Pastor Tim mentioned it, part 18, so we're going to do a sexuality talk at our youth group. Cool, but it's in-house. So it's in-house, and we are going to do graphics, but it's not an outreach per se. This is how many months ahead of time the themes need to be prepared. This is how many weeks your graphic turnaround is. This is when we launch the marketing, like as in it goes up, and your parents, especially if you're covering difficult topics, maybe parental consent forms go out at that point, and then you have your study, right? So that's one line of event timelining. Now you're looking at, let's say you're doing a camp, multiple church camp. You're approximating about 300 to 400 students. Now you're looking at this time frame. You're looking at about 8 to 10 months of planning. All right, because it costs money and it's normally around $300. We want to give families enough time to plan ahead, and so marketing needs to start at this time point. Does that make sense? And so you have to determine that based on your church body. It's different for everyone. So give yourself time. Plan things. Time is a friend. Realistically, knowing how long things take goes back to who are we becoming like Christ, in that we are showing respect, we are showing grace, we are showing dignity with the people that we're working with. It is us lovingly caring for them in a timely manner. Not only is time a really important thing, because most rushed work is trash work, right? You rush something and it's normally trash. Normally, unless you're like epic at like speed designing something, I don't know. But just think about that. Think about your graphics, think about your worship, think about audio prep, all of those things. And then by extension of that, we then become respectful, not of only the person, but that person's time that they need to be good stewards of, even on their own. We get to then support them to actually function properly and Christ in their own development of Christ-likeness, that they're becoming good steward of things. How do we do that? We make plans. We give timelines out. For meetings, if we say it's an hour, it's an hour. Where there's no plan, we have a danger of wasting God's resources, and by extension, God's resources of his people. So time, right? Point number 2, talk it up. I am a volleyball player. I love playing volleyball. And in volleyball, there's this thing called calling the ball, right? So the ball goes up, there's 6 people on your court, and if no one calls it, 2 things can happen. Either everyone goes for it and there's collisions. No one goes for it, there's drop balls. Or someone says they're going to go for it, but they didn't. And then you're just kind of like, ugh, and then there's injuries and issues, right? So talk it up. Comunicación es más importante. See? That is not at all Spanish. I'm so sorry. For everyone who's recording. They're like, what did she say? It's really, really important. Intentional communication. Again, I go back to share the goal, share the vision of the event, of whatever you're planning, continually. This includes, does it complement the goal of our church? Does it complement the goal of our ministry? Does it hit our ministry values? Is it worth it? Are we promoting Christ and discipleship here? Those are some of those vision casting questions. Who is overseeing which team and department? And then follow up, have they been informed? It's like, I gave it to them, but they have no clue. They're just like, you're doing this, right? Like, huh? For that multiple times. Who is responsible for things? And again, have they been informed? Who is ordering things? And again, have they been informed? And what is the budget? Budget is important because we have to be diligent, again, with God's money and resources. Again, including his people. So just be mindful of those things. So talk it up. Intentional communication. The next thing is building lines of communication, connecting people, right? And so we have the task as our desire in administration is to connect people. I know there's a lot of memes right now that says like 2-hour meeting could have been an email. I've heard those and seen those. And I get that, trust me. There is a place and time for that, but let's also be honest, people don't read emails anymore. And our goal is not just information, and duty is discipleship. And sometimes that means face-to-face. That means we invest in a meeting and we get to share because emails don't have tone. I could say something along the lines of like, hey, that sounds good. And someone can misconstrue that even at that point, you know? And so there's something about face-to-face, again, but then also by extension, time. Like if you're gonna call a meeting and it's an hour, let it be an hour. Let your yes be yes and no be no, right? So information is not only the goal, it's discipleship. And then repeat the communication. I can't emphasize this enough. Keep sharing the vision. Keep saying it. Keep feeding it to people, because guess what? You might have a team already from the very get-go, but as you share, the Lord starts providing more, right? And as you continue to spread that idea, that vision that the Lord has given you, he just provides. He just provides people. And guess what that looks like? It's the body becoming the body, and that's what we want, right? And so that is point number 2. Talk it up. Communication. Really, really big deal. Number 3, and lastly, is teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? Recognizing what teams are needed. Practical thing, create the frame of your event from start to finish. And once you kind of know that, the teams that you need are all the pit stops in which people interact with. Okay? And so from the very beginning, you might have a steering team. It might be the main pastor, the youth pastor, and then your main leaders. Cool. Next thing, all right, we need graphics. Now you have a creative team. Oh, now we need to tell people about what's happening. Now you're in your marketing team. All right, now we need to set it up. Now you have your setup team. Okay, but during the event, things are moving. There's your support team. Oh, people are arriving. Who's going to greet them? Your check-in team. Oh, we need to give them refreshment, hospitality team. Oh, but we have a guest speaker, green room team, right? Oh, the speaker needs a mic, AV and audio. Oh, but who's gonna lead the whole thing? MC. We're gonna do an icebreaker, game team, worship team, prayer team, all the teams. Determine what teams you need based on the event from start to finish. Just make a framework, like here's the whole blah blah, and then you start. Mind you, there might be times where you're like, oh, we have everybody, you do the event, you're like, no one took care of that, right? And you're just like, okay, next time, Lord. And then you can kind of whip back next time around and be like, okay, we didn't think we needed this team, but now we need a social media team because parents are wondering what's happening. They need to capture what's going on. It's a quick update, quick touch point for them. Now you need a social media team. Okay, I know, it's like, Krista, why so many teams? Because lighter loads go back to people actually loving what they do, and then you get to, again, utilize giftings, right? There's so much spread that is good for our ministries. And I went to the marriage and ministry thing, and Seth kind of mentioned, like, there are leaders that you're developing, and they can handle it. Give them ownership over it, and it actually allows you to clear the path for even yourself, right? So share some of that. Organizing details for your team, depending again on what your church has. We use Planning Center, but for the longest time, we just did Google spreadsheets, Google Drive stuff, and made it shareable between people. Color coordinating is really good for youth ministry-based things. So like green is all registration stuff, student registration. Red is your staff, finances is blue. Those are really good to have, because why? Because we need to make the information understandable for the masses. That is the reason why we organize details for the team. In youth ministry, in my experience, and it might be your experience as well, normally there's a lot of hands involved, right? And what I mean by that is the person who started the project may not be the same person who ends it. Due to just the reality of ministry or of youth ministry, people come and go. Like, it's not, I think it's just a season of how youth ministry leadership kind of works. You have like college kids who like leave for this, like here for the summer, but then leave. You know, like you need to make your information understandable for the masses. Make the information passable information, right? Many hands make light work. Yes, this is very true. But at the same time, you need to understand whose hands are in your team, right? And so I've been a part of youth groups where the leaders are like someone's grandma. And then I've also been a part of youth groups where like the freshly graduated senior high school person is my leader, right? Because the Lord just provides who he's going to provide. Not super warm body, but like, hey, God's like, hey, I'm called to this, and this is where I'm at. So you might have parents, you might have all these different things. And so your information needs to be understandable even cross-generationally at that point. Understanding whose hands are in your team. Is your instruction understandable for all? Sometimes, depending again on your season, you may not have the choice of hands, but God chose those hands. So just be mindful of those things. God provided exactly who and what you need, okay? Supporting the lead and the team. Why? Because we care even for our servants' experience, right? They are servants of Christ, but they are our brothers and sisters. So we need to treat them as such. I have also learned that having your serve team feel beyond supported and taken care of means that they serve at their very best. And who benefits that? The people we're trying to reach. So when your team is healthy and your team is supported and your team feels like they can go to you, they can ask questions, they have everything that they need to know, the people that come to you, whatever, it could be your normal week-to-week Wednesday nights or an actual event, they are the ones who benefit the wellness of your team. So support the lead and support your team. How do we do that? You build manuals. Build manuals. Write out job descriptions that are specific for these people. All hands meetings are something that I started implementing within our women's ministry at Reliance. During that meeting, we worship together, we pray together, and we hear the word of God together. The objective of that is we try to just realign our hearts and minds to the event that's coming up, because it's ultimately an act of worship. And so we need to get our spiritual stuff in line and in check with one another, with the people that you're serving with, the people that you're linking arms with. So it's honestly become one of my favorite meetings. It's a couple of hours. What we do is we go through the line by line of the event at hand, and I mention every department that is involved. I tell everyone, so everyone in the room knows that the support staff team is setting up tables. Because how many times have you gone to an event, the support staff team knows, but someone who's not a part of the support staff team is like, hey, there's tables that need to be set up outside. Don't worry, someone's got it. You know what I mean? And so when you get to share that with the whole team, you get to utilize your time to simply greet students, talk to parents, welcome them in, maybe start like reviewing your teaching right before, or ministering to your guest worship leader, guest speaker, all these things, because everyone's kind of in the know. So we go line by line on schedule. And then I did a what everyone should know list. Everyone, even your parking attendants, your safety guys, everyone should know. I give out this sheet of important details of locations. So if someone walked up to a parking, like, dude, I need to pee. They know, they know where the bathroom is, you know. Times, a parent comes up, hey, I just dropped up my kid and I forgot to ask, like, what time do they need to be picked up by? Everyone should be able to answer that question, right? Event details, what time is the food being served? If there's dietary like restrictions, being able to tell a parent, don't worry, we have gluten-free options for your child. And everyone knowing that, it just brings a comfort to a parent. And then like out of involvement, like if you're doing a raffle, if you're having a coffee cart, merch table, people just knowing that, because like, I don't know, I've been to so many youth events where like kids are just kind of like, what's happening, you know? But if like an event person, it could be literally anybody, they become personal information hubs. Because we normally have an information hub, but it's like a group of a few people. But now you duplicate that, and now you have 50 information hubs who all know what's happening. You just disperse that information, and what ends up happening is your students actually participate, engage. They've gone to the resource room. They've received prayer because someone told them, hey, you know, if you need prayer, you can go into that room and have prayer. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much of that is necessary. Because also, the end of that, when we don't do something along those lines, one of two things can happen. One of two things. If someone comes up, asks a question, and the volunteer or your person on your serve team doesn't know the question, for the volunteer, it immediately makes them less confident about their role. And then for the guest, you have now lost security. That's what happens, right? So that's one of two outcomes when we don't share information out loud to the whole team. Second thing that goes wrong is out of panic, your volunteer gives out wrong information. And now you're gonna run into wrong information. And have you ever tried to backtrack from wrong information? Like, hey, yo, we're gonna all meet up at McDonald's at like 3 p.m. All right, cool, that's what they told me. Cool, yeah. Okay, I'll see you later. Sorry, my bad, it's actually in and out at 3 p.m. Oh, shoot, you know? And so at that point, I can call that person back, but if they had shared the wrong information, people be rolling up to McDonald's at 3. Right? And then parents are like, why is my kid the only person here? No one told us, you know? And I don't know why I do that voice for parents. Anyway, sorry. all that to say, there's out of panic, it causes confusion and it causes frustration, right? And so sharing that across the board is absolutely necessary. And then the last thing that I try to do is a full floor plan. We have a property that has different rooms, and a lot of our rooms can be flipped to look a certain way. And so like tables, chairs, normally our men's ministry provides us like guys who will like tear the whole sanctuary down, they'll like stack up all the chairs and then pop up all the tables. And I remember the first time we did this, I was like literally on the stage going, no, not there, you know? And I was like, there's got to be a better way. And so we started making floor plans. I used to do weddings on the side years and years ago. And I started using this website. It's called allseated.com. It is a free resource, and it'll help you build floor plans. You just put the dimension of your room, and then there's like items to pull into it, like 6-foot table, yeah. And so when your volunteers come in, also without wasting their time, like, hey dude, like where do you want things? You hand them this beautifully labeled floor plan, like have at it, like enjoy, you know, like I trust you. And then as a leader, you can just walk in and be like, ooh, that might not work. And you just have to shift something. And instead of like, that's not where at all what I meant to have it at, you know, whatever. So allseated.com, allseated, allseated.com. It's a free resource, build floor plans on there. And that's what we covered during our all hands meeting. So always, always, always support your students. I don't know if that slide is available. Yes. I'm so sorry. So I wanted to give you guys something. You guys can just QR code it. It's a QR code. It's my administrator starter kit. And you guys, so it has, but it has like the time frame, my suggested time frame for so it goes from like special studies to like in-house camp to like a, you know, and then like an estimated attendance. Like if you're thinking like 50 people, here's your time frame. Mind you, you can use it, you don't have to use it, but it's something to at least get you started. It has a registration form on there, and it has like all the information that you might want to collect from your students. It has a financial one on there, like how to keep track of who's paid, who's not paid. Did they pay by check? Did they pay by cash? I don't remember. Did they Venmo me? Like I don't, you know. It kind of just helps. So utilize it however you please. But yeah. So I hope that blesses you guys. It's my heart, honestly, that all of us just become kind of just a healthier body, and an administration is a part of that. And yeah, so I love you guys. I just want to let you guys know that the things that you have dreamed up for your youth groups, they're absolutely possible. You know, like dream big, but just count the cost, and that's not a bad thing. Just say like, hey, like if you want, like, you know, there's so many things that the Lord can put in your heart. Just know that He has the same desires as you do. So because he's placed it in your heart, you know, and so they are doable. So just be encouraged by that. I have a few minutes. I don't know if anybody has questions, but I do want to open up the floor for any questions that I can maybe help answer. But yeah. Oh yeah, let's go for it.
Hi.
Hi.
You kind of breezed through a lot about the actual steps of event planning.
Yes.
If you're planning like a youth girls event.
Yes.
Just like a single like night, couple hours thing.
Yes.
Like what types of things do you need to cover?
So the timeline is on here. So there is one that's specific to like one-time events, like a fun like paint night, right? The things that I would think through is appropriateness. So knowing your age group, knowing the culture, you and your students. Again, it's the hard the hard work of like being intentional about what will meet your students. That's a really big thing. That's probably what I will, as an admin, that's how I think. Like, hey, so like we want to do a girls event for our youth group, and you come up with a plan, and I go, sweet, are they into that? Do they love that? You know, do you find themselves talking about that a lot? That's normally my question. And then if the answer is like, yeah, they really want to do this, I'm like, sweet. Where would you like to do this? Would it be on site? Would it be off campus? Do we need parental consent? How much will it cost? All those different things. And then I normally just kind of ask all those questions according to the vision that you had in your head. Like if you were like, hey, I want to do a girls manicure pedicure thing, and the leaders get to do the girls, like, you know, hands and feet. I'm like, sweet, what do you need? What materials do you need? Nail polish, so like nail polish, maybe like a foot bath spa thing, type of thing. And then my brain goes to, okay, sweet, let's put that PO in, that payment order in, so that we can ask for that budget to come out of, you know, whatever department. Who's purchasing it in that time frame? And then order of service. Oh, that includes an order of service, the QR code, kind of saying like, all right, 3 o'clock, we're setting up the foot spas, and we're warming up the water for the girls. Sweet. And then when they get in at 4, someone's going to share, you know, that they're beautiful and they're created by Christ, and we want to celebrate their beauty and celebrate who God created them to be. And then we're going to take like 45 minutes just doing each other's nails. And here, leaders, here are the things that we want to cover while we're doing that. So those are the things that I would think through. But that, again, all comes from how the Lord leads you for that particular event. But those are, if anything, is it what they're into? How are you going to do it? Who's going to do it? Those are like, and then sometimes out of that, even just as you're planning, I heard it again. There's just so many confirmations throughout this weekend, which is so cool. The Lord likes to steer moving ships. So as you start making steps for that, you'll start seeing the Lord give you reminders, or your admin would be triggered to ask a question of like, hey, like did we turn the AC on for the girls so they're not like smeltering getting their nails done or what have you. So I don't know if that helped. Talk to me more. Yeah, you and I can, I can get into deep detail over that. Anything else? Yes.
Do you have any good ways that we can show appreciation to our admin?
Oh yeah. So there is a National Day of Admin Appreciation. Did you guys know that? There is one. And in the past, honestly, people simply just like got us coffee or whatever. But I think the greatest thing that you can do to appreciate your admin is to work alongside of them and to allow them to collaborate with you. Because that is genuinely our heart. Like if I'm gonna be very honest, I have this part of my heart and my brain, but in my head, I'm like, Lord, this is how you created me. I'll go into an event and I'm like, oh, I wish I could have, you know what I mean? Like I could have, like I wish I could just get in there and be like, hey, how do I support you in this? Or certain things have been dropped, and I'm just like, what could we have done as a team to have made sure that wouldn't have happened, you know? And so open collaboration and trust for your admin is honestly such a blessing enough, because it is our gifting. It's something that God has appointed us to do. And so when people allow us to freely move in that appointment, there's joy and there's fulfillment there, because that's how Christ, that's how God had modeled it to be. So food, coffee, and just let us come alongside of you, relationally, like getting to know one another. But yeah. Any other questions?
How do you do your after event kind of evaluations in a very
Oh, yeah, feedback. So for our team, we send out two things. We send out a volunteer's experience feedback and then an attendee experience feedback. So I do have both. And for the volunteers, I ask them, hey, what department did you work under, or what team did you work under? Who was your overseer? What did you see did not work? What did you see did work and we should actually implement from here on in? Is there something we had missed that, like, in the midst of serving, you're like, oh, next time we should do this for this particular thing? I give them that space. And then that conversation of, like, how was the communication line between you as a team member and your department lead? Because then that gives me an opportunity to then disciple, if I have to, come alongside that department lead and be like, hey, here's some feedback that I heard. You know, we could be a little bit more intentional about this. People had this and it was beautiful and they felt really supported, or they felt like they lacked communication in these areas. So then there's continuous growth and improvement in a space of, it's fully it's not anonymous to me who receives it, but it'll be anonymous to the person who I'm talking to, because then it's just something that they can all just grow in. So yeah. And then the experience, the attendee experience has things like, what was your highlight of the event? What did you enjoy? And then I put all the features of that particular event, like the merch table, prayer room, all those different things. And I asked them, did you interact with this? Because then you'll find out, like, did we not tell anybody about, if there's so many people that said, like, I didn't know that there was a photo booth. Then you start thinking, oh, maybe that was a lost feature. Like, we invested in it. We dropped $150 on whatever, but no one even utilized it. And so you kind of get a really cool, overview of what was needed and what was maybe not needed, So I don't know if that helps, but yeah. Yes?
I'm wondering, and this isn't necessarily about youth ministry because parents might oversee answering that.
Yeah.
But if you find yourself working under someone who's like generally kind of sensitive,
Yeah.
or like prone to discouragement, or really just feeling like you're always challenging them, how do you navigate that space?
As an admin? So, like, my overseer being that way?
Yes.
Okay. I think when...
This is not about
Oh, yeah. Byron, what the heck? I'm just kidding. It's like, we'll have a conversation about this later. I know. So with that, I have, as an admin, because we come alongside and we support, I have, and I don't know, honestly, there's times where I'm like, Lord, is that just you? I have learned the pattern of my overseer, right? And so, like, particularly with the person that I serve under right now, I know her patterns. I know, to some extent, because out of relationship and close proximity and just serving alongside one another, I kind of see when she likes something, when she doesn't like something, when I might have space that the Lord had already paved out to maybe say a hard word or give a hard feedback about something. And so at that point, I think for us on the administrative end, we have to be faithful to those truths, and at the same time pray for wisdom when it comes, when it's shared from us to them, that on the other end, Christ is already at work in that person, because what Christ is trying to do within his body is greater than how we feel like with each other, not that it's not important, it is absolutely, because there's something about rapport and teamwork, but if I'm saying, hey, we are so over budget and this is now outside of our value even as a church to be good stewards of something, I still have to have that conversation and trust that the Lord will honor it, and also trust the other person's response and walk with Christ even in their sensitivity, you know? And then normally once it's said, we'll see it come to fruition, and then I always circle back and I'm like, was that okay? Like, is there something that I could have done better to support you in this, or to maybe share truth about where we're really at with a particular project or whatever. But a lot of that is already built relationally, first and foremost, and then on top of that, our greater call to be obedient, right? So it's hard. I have been under certain people where like they've made wrong decisions, and they continued, like even outside, even from the perspective of like, I don't think it's wise, but they kept on, and I, in the position of where I'm supposed to be with Christ, I submit under that. I watch it play out, and I go, all right, Lord, you covered that in grace already, and we just move on. It's happened, you know, and that's okay. That's just kind of what it is. And but I have to trust and believe that my choice to submit myself under that person, that Christ is going to take care of the rest of it, you know. And I have seen almost entirely all the way through that those people that I've served and Christ just covered it. Then Christ actually taught them, without even my involvement, what needed to actually happen. You know what I mean? And so, like, I mean, we can plan all the things, but ultimately Christ covers all of it, right? And so my prayer whenever it comes to events, I'm like, Lord, perfection isn't attainable in this world, but they need to see you perfected, like in his realm of perfection. And so my hope is that they see Christ. But I will do everything that I can, that I am able to control, and then from there I have to release it. Is that hard for me sometimes? Yes, absolutely. I think it's hard for every admin. We can't answer every question. We can't, cover everything, but then Christ covers it, and it's good. So, yeah, I don't know. Did that help? Yeah. So, anything else? Yeah? If you guys have any questions, like, please don't hesitate. I know you have 6 minutes until you need to be at the beach. I'm so sorry, but come up. I love this kind of conversation. Let me just pray over you guys, and then you guys are good to go.